Hey, kids at home. If you're anything like me, you're a big action figure collector. And if you're even more like me, you've decided that Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries is not just a breakfast food, but is really an all-day, everyday meal that, well, pretty much everyone should partake of. Okay, but going back to the action figure collecting, we have on our shelf the work of very, very talented sculptors, toy designers, and artists. And most toy designers understand the logistics and engineering and details of how to bring a toy to market. Some of them are also really good at growing Santa Claus-esque beards all their life. And sometimes you get a designer who is also a fan of said property. Not that common, but it does happen. There are designers and toy makers out there that are, well, I guess, not just fans, but they're also kids at heart. I mean, obviously some are, business people, businessmen, businesswomen, but when you get a designer who thinks like a kid, works like a kid, asks questions like a kid, well, you often get toy lines that are more fantastic and more playable, for lack of a better word. I don't think that's actually the right word. Well, what about when toys are literally designed by children? Does this ever happen? I mean, obviously, lots of kids design things on pieces of paper, and there's plenty of kits out there if you're into action figure customization that you can buy things like blank bucks and unpainted figures, as well as all of the, accoutrements you would need from paintbrushes to sandpaper in order to make your own action figure. And there's a lot of options out there. But for those children in, well, very specific situations, there have been figures over the years actually designed by children. Now, I'm not talking about something like this from Ryan's world where it's an action figure of a child, like meaning, an actual child who lives. But I mean, that's no different than, getting an Anakin Skywalker action figure from episode 1. It's just an action figure of a child. This wasn't actually designed by Ryan, if you will, and I don't think Jake Lloyd designed any of the Anakin Skywalker little kid action figures. Well, there are some really cool examples, and pretty much my favorite, which I'm going to lead this video off with, was one that was a partnership between KB Toys. You remember KB Toys, like when you actually used to go to the mall and there were toy stores? And Make-A-Wish Foundation, which is also the official charity of Spector Creative here. We've been able to raise quite a bit of money for them, selling off some, sort of high-end, rare toys. You can check out our eBay links if you want to see those. Anyway, besides the partnership we have with Make-A-Wish, Make-A-Wish teamed up with KB Toys and young Jeff Luttrell, Luttrell. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Luttrell? So here is the shot of him, and this is the character he designed. Razor. This is actually not his art. This is fan art, believe it or not, of the character that someone else made, but it was the only illustration I could find online. But you can imagine this is very similar to what Jeff did as a child. And Make-A-Wish's promise to him was that he wanted to see an action figure of his original creation of Razor and his mongoose sidekick. And that's what they did, teaming up with Resource, who was quite a big toy company back in the early 90s when this came out. It was exclusively sold at KB. You may know Resource best from, well, they had a couple lines, like they did Street Fighter, they did some Sonic the Hedgehog action figures, Crash Bandicoot, and what was it, that Virus line? Probably remember that one well, the one that is definitely, absolutely not a ripoff of Aliens in any manner, right? Okay. Point is, Resource, KB Toys, Make-A-Wish teamed up to make Jeff's wish come true, and the figure was available for purchase. In fact, you can still find it on eBay. It pops up now and then. The figure really does hold up. I mean, the sculpting, the detail is not that far off from where modern toys like Marvel Legends are. And Jeff even signed some for fans at a KB mall location when the figure premiered. So here is a great example of, yes, there are action figures out there that are actually designed by the intended audience. I mean, not that adult collectors aren't an intended audience, but we tend to be more gravy on top of the bulk of sales that kids and parents do. All right, well, of course, we couldn't talk about kids making action figures without a quick side stop with the Masters of the Universe Create-A-Character contest. If you're not familiar with this, the original one from the 1980s promised a college education, a trip to Los Angeles, and the chance to be president of Mattel for a day. And when the finalists were chosen, you could call in a 1-900 number. Remember those? Yeah, Mattel actually charged you to vote. And the winner by phone call was little Nathan Bittner, who, unfortunately, his winning entry, Fearless Photog, didn't get made because, well, the He-Man line ended before it could get to market. And luckily, because Masters of the Universe fans are some of the most passionate in the world, they were supportive of an adult collector line that came out between 2007 and 2016 called Motu Classics, and we were able to incorporate this figure that never got made in the vintage line as a classics figure. Granted, it was taller, had more articulation than it would have had, and it would be really cool, I think, to see this show up in something like Motu Origins, to see what Fearless Photog would have looked like had he actually been released back in the 80s. And in conjunction with doing Fearless Photog, the Classics line also had a new contest for the 30th anniversary of the brand, where once again, runners-up were selected, and a final winner was chosen, this time by Mattel employees, not 900 phone calls. We were also able to drop in the original runners-up from the 80s contest into the mini-comics that came with the Masters of the Universe Classic figures as He-Man's allies, and the runners-up from the modern contest as Skeletor's allies. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what toy making and what comic books and geekdom is all about, finding cool ways to drop everything and make it all come together. So yeah, if you were a follower of the Masters of the Universe Classics mini-comics, you got to see a really cool battle between the runners-up from the 80s contest and the runners-up from the 2012 30th anniversary contest. So, all characters designed by, well, at least the 80s ones, by kids. The ones from the modern line were adults. You had to be 18 or older. And while two of the other characters from the 30th anniversary series were made, quote-unquote, by adults, well, two of them were designed when these adults were kids. And I know this because one of them was my character, Mighty Spectre, which is what my company and my YouTube channel is actually named after. So, yes, I, as brand manager of the line, was assigned one of the slots by management after I wasn't able to find anyone else willing to work on it for free. I reached out to a lot of old He-Man designers and comic book artists, and after spending a lot of time doing that, management was basically like, fine, just do it yourself. So I was given one of the slots, and I put in this character, Mighty Spectre, that I designed when I was 8 or 9 as a kid, and got to see him become part of the Masters of the Universe Classics line, just like Fearless Photog. He went through a few different design changes, first having jet boots and furry shorts, and then Terry Higuchi, who was the designer, was able to take my sketches and my ideas and actually turn it into a workable design that would translate into the line. Likewise, Jeff Johns, who was the only comic book artist willing to do a figure for free, everyone else wanted huge amounts of money to participate in this 6-figure rollout, well, Jeff being a really cool guy and a fan of Masters of the Universe, and a fan of kind of everything pop culture and geek, dug up an old creation of his that he also created as a child. So Sir Laser-Lot, while he was designed and sculpted by the Four Horsemen with the help of Terry Higuchi from Mattel Design, in every aspect from what he looked like under the helmet to all of his accessories to how the different parts would come together, all of it was based on Jeff's sketches from when he was 8 years old. And how do we know this? Well, Jeff had the sketches. He had to dig them up. And I remember we were right at the deadline. And I was calling him like, Jeff, if you don't send the sketches over this week, we're going to miss the window to produce this figure. So he kept promising he'd find them. And then finally, like on the last day, he found them and had his assistant fax them over or email me copies. But yeah, this was a character that he sort of plotted out a whole history of and, who he was and even what his relationship was with other characters. Jeff actually had plans, along with the Robot Chicken crew, to use this character. I remember the Robot Chicken guys called me when they found out about this. Like, wait, you took Sir Laser-Lot. We were going to do something with that. But yeah, this was cool. And Jeff's designs from when he was 8, 9 years old got turned into a modern action figure. So perfect an example. All right, this one's maybe a little bit more wishy-washy, but I think it really does count. Legion of Superheroes, Losh, right? All right, well, Superboy is the exception because obviously Superboy is based on Superman, who was, created back in the late 30s. The Legion of Superheroes, however, when they premiered in Adventure Comics as a sort of future force that was judging Superboy on whether or not he had original powers, well, the Legion of Superheroes was created by this person, or rather I should say, this child. If you don't recognize this child, well, you probably will with the next slide. So this is young Jim Shooter. Yes, that Jim Shooter, who went on to work for Marvel, creating some of the most, I guess, original characters from Marvel's kind of 1980s run, where he really revamped the entire universe, as well as Valiant Comics. And more or less, he designed all of the original Legion of Superheroes characters. DC had no idea he was 13 when they hired him. They just really liked his script and his story. Once they found out, it just kind of became part of the fun. So yeah, more or less every Legion of Superheroes toy out there is basically from the 13-year-old brain of Jim Shooter. Alright, the last one is also in the vein of being designed by a child and also coming from a comic book. And of course, based on the image you're seeing scrolling across your screen, you know this is Axe Cop. If you're not familiar with Axe Cop, it is it started off as a black and white comic book, then it expanded into different licensing opportunities, including animation and action figures. The unique thing about Axe Cop is while it was drawn by a professional comic book artist, it was created by his younger brother, who I believe was 4 or 5 years old when he created it, and would basically play out the stories together. So, yeah, as they would come up with ideas, literally playing in the living room or outside, those ideas would get written down and become the adventures of Axe Cop and his dinosaur with gun arms and sunglasses, because does that not look like the dream of a 6-year-old? That's what's so awesome about toys designed by children. They actually they have that magic you can't get unless you're a child at heart. And I think it's really cool when kids get these opportunities. Did I miss any? Can you think of any other examples of action figures that have actually made it to market designed by children? Love to know, because I'm sure I've missed a few. Let me know in the comments below. Any help sharing this video is always appreciated, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.